What if the color of your eyes could turn friends into strangers within minutes? On a gray Iowa morning, a third-grade teacher reached for a stack of collars, and the classroom order of love and fairness shattered. The lesson would scar, save, enrage, and echo for decades. April 5th, 1968. The morning after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot. A young teacher in Riceville asked herself, how do 9-year-olds feel a wound they cannot see? Her answer would be as simple as a color and as devastating as a mirror. She stood before her third graders and said the unthinkable. Blue-eyed children are better. Colors for the brown-eyed. Recess split. Water fountain rules. In minutes, shoulders slumped, voices sharpened, and the room learned how a story about worth becomes a weapon. This was Jane Elliott, a farmer's daughter, a mother, a teacher who believed fairness wasn't a poster, it was a practice. In her mind, empathy had to be felt under the skin, where the sting of rules could bruise a child's day and rewire a life. The rules tightened. Blue eyes got seconds at lunch and extra recess. Brown eyes lost privileges, then lost patience. A boy with blue eyes raised his hand higher. A brown-eyed friend whispered less. The smallest benefits rearranged the room's map of power.
Words sharpened into nicknames. Brown-eyed students stumbled on spelling drills they'd aced a day before. Blue-eyed pupils, suddenly gifted, cut their mistakes in half. The kids weren't changing brains. They were breathing new air. Privilege for some, pressure for others. Day 2, she flipped the script. Brown eyes were superior. Relief flooded some faces, shame others. Both sides felt the collar bite. Only then did she ask, what did we build here? Who told you it was true? The class stared at their own hands, haunted. News traveled. Parents argued at kitchen tables. Some praised the courage, others called it cruelty. In a town where neighbors knew each mailbox, Jane's name filled whispers, letters, and soon national cameras, eager to capture a radical experiment. A documentary crew returned to her classroom. They filmed the collars, the tears, the slurs that sprouted in a day and withered when denied air. When the film aired, America saw itself. Small-town faces revealing a national sickness no chart had cured. The backlash hit like sleet. Colleagues closed doors. Anonymous letters curled with hate. Her children caught insults at recess. Yet the letters also brought confessions, strangers admitting to prejudice they'd never named, and teachers asking how to make them feel it. Jane left the cornfields for conference rooms. She brought the collars to adults, factory floors, city agencies, correctional staff. Executives and guards found themselves thirsty at the wrong fountain, late by design, talked over by colleagues, suddenly licensed to dismiss. At a corrections training hall, men who managed danger daily felt a different edge, the slow abrasion of being measured by a trait you can't control. Some squared their shoulders, others blinked hard. Many spoke less, a silence that sounded like learning. The logic stayed brutal and clean, changed nothing but status. Watch posture, speed, memory, even handwriting warp under contempt. Jane timed the shifts. Test scores sagged when scorn pressed down. They rose when respect returned. The brain, it seemed, kept receipts. Critics bristled. Was this learning or staged humiliation? Did the pain teach empathy or simply wound? Jane fired back. Minorities don't get to schedule prejudice. If one day hurt, imagine an entire life. The room often ended in uneasy applause. The students from Riceville grew up. As adults, they sat again, watched their child selves sling barbs, watched their faces harden and crumble on film. Some wept. Others nodded. This was the day they learned how a lie can live warmly in a rulebook. One classmate remembered calling his best friend stupid because a chart said so. Another recalled the collar itch long after it was gone. The power wasn't in fancy theory. It was in a rule spoken without blinking, and the speed with which we obeyed it. National talk shows called. Under hot studio lights, Jane stared into the lens and asked America to pick a side. Comfort or courage? Some audiences cheered. Some recoiled. She kept repeating one sentence. You learned it, you can unlearn it.
Her method spread to boardrooms and classrooms abroad. Some translated the exercise to skin tone cards, accent games, or surname bias. Inside every variant was the same hinge: power granted for no reason, revoked without warning, leaving a bruise in memory's softest place. But criticism deepened. Psychologists warned of re-traumatizing participants, or producing resentment, not reflection. Activists asked, where's the structural change? Jane answered with grit. First feel the storm, then fix the roof. Policies, hiring, curriculum, habits tested daily. What made it work? Neuroscience would later map the stress response. Cortisol climbs, working memory shrinks, vigilance spikes. Jane had seen it on spelling quizzes. The culture calls it stereotype threat. The children called it a bad day that felt endless. Behind the microphone stood a woman who had paid a price. Friendships thinned. Job prospects chilled. Her kids absorbed the town's anger. Yet she refused the soft lie of neutrality, insisting that silence can look polite while it holds the door for cruelty. Her classroom became legend, her mailbox a battlefield. She returned to training after training, never promising catharsis, only clarity. Discrimination is a system wearing human faces. People aren't the problem alone. Policies are the skeleton. Change both or repeat lesson. Then came the session that cracked a room wide open. Midway through, a participant snapped, voice sharp with the privilege of never being measured. The callers faltered. The group flinched. Jane didn't soothe. She steadied the rules, and the silence returned like gravity.
She asked the question she keeps for breaking points. If you could trade places with the people you say are treated the same as you, would you? The room stayed still. No one stood. The absence of motion answered more loudly than any speech. A woman in the back whispered, "I didn't know I could be cruel." Another man stared at his hands, hands that had signed evaluations, sorted resumes, set schedules. The callers had become policies in his memory, and memory was now an uncomfortable witness. The climax of her lesson is not the shout, it's the debrief. Collars come off, but the rules remain pinned to the board like evidence. Who enforced them? Who complied? The group rebuilds its own map, vow by vow, rule by rewritten rule. Years later, former participants speak of reflexes changed, pausing before jokes, scanning for who's missing, challenging scoring rubrics that reward sameness. The exercise didn't end in the room. It walked out in their habits, where culture quietly lives or dies. Yet the hardest scenes belong to Riceville's children. They remember the caller's weight, then the freedom, and the shame of having switched sides. The exercise planted an allergy to rules that feel smooth going on and burn when worn by someone else. Jane's lesson sits inside a larger struggle: laws carved after marches, court rulings like milestones, and daily micro-decisions that either honor them or erode them. The classroom was a spark. The fire is policy plus practice, oxygenated by conscience. On a stage, she is fierce, unscripted, a Midwesterner wielding questions like farm tools, blunt, useful, unpretty. She has been called saint and sadist, prophet and provocateur. She will settle for teacher, one who makes the hidden curriculum visible. Is empathy enough? No, she says. It is a door, not the house. Enter, then build. Hire fairly, teach history whole, measure outcomes, reward dissent that improves justice. Without that, the collars return, quieter but no less tight. What if the color of your eyes determined your day? It never did, until a teacher made it so, long enough for a town, then a nation, to feel the cut. The collars are paper. The lesson is steel. What we do next decides whether it rusts or forges us.